Hello everyone, your host Ivan Stano here. I have a great pleasure of welcoming Sam Kleidman to the show today. Sam is the founder and principal advisor at Middlesex Consulting. He applies the methodologies and techniques associated with the customer value creation and service marketing professions. His successful career spans over 20 years as a leader of high-tech, B2B, and customer service organizations. On top of that, Sam utilizes his hands-on experience in engineering, manufacturing, consulting, and general management to help clients grow their services business and win customer loyalty. We're going to discuss today's topic, which is hire for attitude, train for skill. Sam, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for that nice introduction. And I'm fine. Yeah, it's good here.
It's great to see you. We've met in person a couple months ago, and now we decided to do a little podcast and a show together.
I think it's a great progression of a relationship.
I agree. Great. So if you don't mind, let's dive right into it. And today's topic is hire for attitude, train for skill. Could you maybe describe for me and all the listeners what it means in terms of today's workforce?
Sure. So today, first of all, a lot of people are leaving jobs. It used to be called the Great Resignation, and now people are switching their thinking and they're calling it the Great Reshuffle because people are leaving jobs and everybody knows they have to go someplace else to keep living and paying their living. So there's a lot of movement going on. But the people that are hiring and trying to hire and retain employees, especially field-based employees, seem to be making a couple of fundamental mistakes. So I'd like to just talk about them for a little bit first. The first mistake they're making is that their job description and the job requirements do not match reality or what they're prepared to pay. So that means that I read today that on LinkedIn that a LinkedIn study showed that something like 30 or 40% of the job listings on LinkedIn was called an entry-level position looking for an average of 3.5 years experience. Now, that's pretty amazing. An entry-level position usually means zero experience.
Fresh graduates.
Right. Yeah. First job, entry level. Mm-hmm. And they're looking for 3 to 4 years experience, but they're thinking that they're going to pay these people at the entry level value and entry level salary. So, and then people are wondering, how come I can't fill my jobs? Mm-hmm. So that's one problem. The other problem is they're overstating the basic qualification. So they're saying that, for example, service engineers need a college degree. Not sure why. I know they need a driver's license, but I'm not sure why they need a college degree. Mm-hmm. If they have it and they're working in a technical area, it's nice. Certainly it's valuable, but it should not be a requirement for many service jobs. I can't imagine why anybody really needs a degree to work on a dishwasher or an air conditioning system or those kind of things. Maybe if they're working on, I really don't know. I was responsible for servicing equipment that was used with electron microscopes. Mm-hmm. And our best engineers had military experience. Mm-hmm. And maybe they had an associate's degree, but not a college degree. So the problem is that the people looking to hire are positioning themselves to fail. And it's going to be that way for a while. So what I learned is that when you're looking for people today, especially, the odds of finding someone that has recent experience doing the job that you want them to do, and they were successful at it, that's pretty small. I mean, it really is a difficult kind of a background to find. So what I learned is that instead of looking to hire from my competitors and they're going to do the same from me, I wanted to hire people that had the attitude, the values, the personality, the communication skills that I was looking for. And I knew that no matter where I got them from, I had to teach them the technology anyway. So why make that a requirement and just have to unlearn them from their previous job and train them about the new stuff?
Exactly. Besides, the technologies evolve, right? The products evolve, the machines evolve. That's like a trend that's non-stopping.
Right.
So a good technician working out in the field has to keep learning throughout their career anyway, right?
Absolutely. And the more they've learned on some other equipment, especially if it's similar to yours, the more you have to unlearn and you know, just like wipe the slate and then start putting in your knowledge and you know, not get it confused in their minds.
Mm-hmm. But what you described in the beginning, like your observations on LinkedIn and the articles that you read, it really suggests like, or the situation almost looks like that the companies are looking for already skilled people, right? Bring me skill, bring me experience, 3-4 years, bring me college degree.
Right.
So what kind of challenges does it create for companies who go with skill rather than attitude?
It for the hiring managers, it's like beating your head against the wall of your desk. I mean, you're going to get tons of resumes, and they're not going to be relevant to you and your job. That their experience may or may not be close, but they're going to get a lot of experience that really doesn't matter and is probably detrimental in your situation. Whereas if you brought in someone who has the right attitude and you assess that they have the ability to learn, they have the ability to absorb what you're doing and we're happy to learn from a number of different directions, whether you have a training manager, the service manager, their peers, their customers, all of those people teaching them, and they're happy to absorb it. And when they do, they'll be really what you're looking for. That I think is the safest way to hire good field engineers these days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It really is. And I mean, sometimes you get people that come from another, even an adjacent industry that are so set in their ways and so set in their biases that they cause more trouble internally and even sometimes with customers than if you had somebody that came in with a fresh outlook and is willing to learn.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of brings another question in my head. Like it sounds great. Let's hire for attitude, right? But it's not easy to discover what the real attitude is, right? No. I'm sure there are techniques. I'm sure you can go over several rounds of interviews, but end of the day, it's always a little bit of a guessing game what the attitude of the person is, how they're going to fit into our culture, what values they're going to bring. But one great story that you told me when we first met was from your times in the military, right?
And no, not my time. This story was long after I was in the military.
Okay.
Okay. So the story, it was all about the group I was responsible for serviced, and let's get it right. Yeah, they serviced data communications. No, I'm sorry, wrong job. They serviced analytical instrumentation. And when I took over, we had a couple of very small groups, each servicing one product line in North America. And my job was to merge them together and make them into a cohesive service force and then be able to figure out how to make money out of them instead of it being a cost center. But I was fortunate enough that I had two guys in one product area who knew each other, and they knew each other from the military. So these two guys turned out to be Air Force avionics technicians. They worked next to the flight line, fixing the electronics in airplanes. And when I started, when I needed to add more people, I would go to them and say, I need another guy like you. Or I say, I need another guy like him.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a great network, and that's how we started filling the jobs. Then we kind of ran out of that network. So we went to a recruiter, but I said, I don't really care so much what their military background was. I cared that they were in the military working on electronics equipment. We went to a recruiter, and I told him that was what I was looking for. And he brought me a perfect candidate. I mean, he was, at the interviews, everybody that met him fell in love. And it turned out that for the next 10 years, he worked with us, and we were correct. It was the right fit. His background was he was a technician on a nuclear submarine. And so after a while, I spent some time with him, and I wanted to find out what life was like on the submarine, what life was like for him, and how he learned, because they go on a 6 months cruise, 6 months on, 6 months off.
Mm-hmm.
And during those 6 months on the cruise, they have to learn, because when they get off, their expectation is, or the expectation of them is, that they will be ready to get a promotion or take on more responsibility. And as he explained it to me, I said, my God, this makes so much sense. So what they did was, when he came on board, they had a stack of books, and then they kept them there because every cruise, there were so many new people coming, and there were so many different disciplines, but they had a stack of books, and they give him a little notebook with a checklist and a place for somebody to sign off. So he started reading the books, and he was told, when you get to the point where you feel that you're comfortable repairing this kind of a piece of equipment, you go see the petty officer in charge of that area and tell him, I'm ready. And he will give you a test. Mm-hmm. And if you pass the test, he signs his name on the line for that category. And if not, and you move on to the next one. And if not, okay, go back and study some more. You blew it. And that was the way they learned. And they did that for 6 months at a time, learning on their own, having peers that they could go to ask questions, pick their brains, learn the shortcuts, and then go to this petty officer, the supervisor, and he would give them the test, and he would continue to mentor them, coach them, give them tips. This is really the way we do it in the real world. This is what you have to be careful about. Don't worry about it. And that's how they learned. And it was a continuous process, because every time you're on a cruise, different crew maybe, and different people and different ideas, and you want to learn the next piece of equipment in that area, and you just keep going. And so that the fact that they could learn on their own, that they could get information from their peers, and they convince the supervisor that they are well enough trained on this piece of equipment that they can be trusted to fix it in a combat situation. Mm-hmm. That alone said so much about their attitude, their willingness to learn, their ability to learn, the ability to work on their own, to take responsibility, to understand the ramifications. If I screw up, I could kill 120 of my close friends. That to me was really important. And then, realizing that when they're on the sub, and I keep saying sub because that's what I was finding, but I know that there are similar circumstances on other naval ships. but the sub was just so confined and so intense that I kept going back and looking for people with that background. But that was just a reaffirmation that they are good communicators, they're good listeners, they know how to ask questions, they get to the heart of the matter. They're serious people because they're living in a war machine, so you got to be serious about it. And those were the kind of people that, as I got to hire them, really fit into the group. They weren't. I could send them anywhere I needed to. I had complete confidence that they will represent us professionally, competently, and make the customers feel secure, feel that they're getting service from a highly qualified person.
Mm-hmm. It really sounds like the submarine as an environment or space really amplified what we're looking for when we say hire for attitude, right?
Right, but not only did it amplify, but it also filtered.
Mm-hmm.
And because if they couldn't make it in that environment, they don't have the right attitude.
Yeah.
So it was a reinforcement of both the skill set and the attitude, the ability to fit into the culture and deal with customers the way you wanted them to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also just remembered one example you gave me when we talked last time, and it was take the technicians from the Formula One, probably the highest skilled people, right?
Right.
And put them on the tarmac here on the Logan Airport and ask them to fix an engine's plane. And even though they're a fantastic team working to the milliseconds to be in complete sync, each member probably carrying a lot of knowledge, they'd probably be useless, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The only thing I would be concerned about, and it's a real difference in my mind, at least, is that the naval guys, they are working under a finite but realistic time constraint, whereas the pit crew, you got 2 seconds to change the tires, fill up the tank, adjust the rear flap, all the wing. So that to me means that they could work really intensely for 5 or 10 seconds, but I don't know if they had the wherewithal to continue doing this at a steady stream day in and day out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's another way of knowing that they have those skills. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the current climate where we see the companies are facing the great reshuffle, and we totally are standing behind the right attitude, a bit more important than the skill that we can teach, right?
Right.
What do you see companies are doing? How they're challenged and how they're trying to overcome that challenge?
Well, as you can imagine, these kind of people that we're talking about are limited, the finite number of them in the country or in your area or wherever you want to hire them. So you still have to figure out other ways of getting the service that you've committed to getting that delivered to your customers. And what that's evolved into is something that the industry calls a blended workforce. So a blended workforce.
Yes, please explain.
Yeah. It's a, let me get it right. So there are a couple of different groups of people who will work for you in some way as a field service engineer in parallel and simultaneously across the country. So that means you have today, as a field service manager, you can be managing your own direct employees. Number one, you can be managing a number of part-time temporary employees, gig workers. So maybe you had a really good engineer in Cincinnati, and he would do a lot of traveling around the country because didn't have enough work to keep him busy at home. but then he retired. And you say to him, well, now that you're retired, how would you like to be available to us as a contingent worker so that if we have a job that you can do and you've done before in Cincinnati where you live, then I will call you and you promise to show up within X hours and we'll work and then we'll pay you at the end of the job. So there's that contingent worker. The next group, and that's very common these days. I mean, I know of one guy who runs the service organization for a huge robot organization, and he's got 10,000 of these independent contractors that he's qualified and work on the equipment that he sold, and he's responsible for the maintenance. So I mean, it's not like it's only one guy in Cincinnati. It could be 10,000 if your company's big enough.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, but that's one pairing: direct and contingent workers that are under your direct control. The next group that you will probably find yourself working with are independent service organizations. So these are groups headed by somebody who was probably a former service engineer, and he went off and became one of these contingent workers. And he said, I can make some more money at this. And he brings on his son, then his son-in-law, and then friends of theirs. And he may have 10, 12, 15 people servicing your equipment and other equipment like yours in one geographic area. Right? And that happens all over the country also. So that's a third group, right? Then these folks may have not only the 10 or 12 full-time employees, but they may have a couple of gig workers on their payroll or on their call list also. So now you've got this crazy situation. And then on top of that, there are in some industries, there are organizations that, big manufacturing companies that have well-evolved service groups, and they go out and bid on servicing your equipment. So you see that very frequently in hospitals. You see it in life sciences, those two areas for sure. So you may find that you get a phone call, your call center gets a call from a large company and they say, we have the contract to repair your equipment as well as 12 other manufacturers in this manufacturing plant. And what we want to do is set up the relationship so that I want to know how much you're going to charge me for tech support and what you're going to charge me for spare parts and all that. And we'll go in and do the work. And yet, at the end of the day, they're working on your equipment. And when they leave and they did a bad job, they don't say, oh, Joe Blow Manufacturing came in and they screwed it up. They said, nope, the guy who came in and worked on the whatever, they screwed it up. And it reflects back on you. Mm-hmm. So that's what the blended workforce is. Whole bunch of different people with different backgrounds, different experiences, different priorities, different concerns, all potentially working on your equipment.
That must be quite a challenge to manage such a diverse.
You said that with a straight face. That's impressive.
Well, I tried my best.
It's really a bitch, because what you've done as a manufacturer, if you've agreed on a service contract, you promised a certain response time or a certain time to fix it. Mm-hmm. And then you built your organization using these other non-direct employee assets. And you and they have had conversations about, yep, you call me and I can show up anywhere in this area in 2 hours. And you call them up and they say, I can't come today because I'm taking my kid to the soccer game. Mm-hmm. And so the problem is, how do you manage these people? How do you, first of all, know when they're available for dispatch or not? And you know that real life takes precedent over contractual agreements. The kids' hockey game is more important than driving 50 miles in a snowstorm to work somewhere. But how do you get all that done? How do you uh, get enough of their mind share? The people call it mind share. How much they think about you, so that when you ask them to do something, when you dispatch them, when you say, "I need you to do it," and it's a very touchy situation because the company is finishing out their fiscal year tomorrow and they're going to blow it because our equipment is broken unless you show up and fix it.
Mm-hmm. So how do the best of the best do it?
They drink a lot. I think it's really tough. It's a matter of the relationship. It's like, what we were kidding earlier. It's about the relationship. If you are counting on legal documents or some kind of documentation to make sure everything is going to work right, it's not. But if you know these people, if you know their family, you know them well, you know their friends, they know you. If they were hired through another employee of yours, and so there's a stronger relationship, that's what you do. And then you have to set up mechanisms so that that in your dispatch system, when they're available and when they're not. You know that they will let you know when they are unavailable, when they should have been available.
Mm-hmm. So it almost sounds like it would be a blend of technology that enables all these different roles to cooperate together,
mm-hmm.
and kind of centralize or provide that centralized view on all the resources, right? And the different groups as you described them before.
Right.
And then it kind of sounds like it brings us back to the beginning of conversation, that it's a lot about the attitude and the feel of responsibility, being part of the team. So
mm-hmm.
being part of something bigger because we're here on a certain mission, right?
Absolutely. And they've got to buy into everybody talks about the purpose, and that's kind of hackneyed and hard to touch and hard to think about. But businesses have purposes. And if your purpose is, I was thinking about an example for something else but I was thinking about like Pfizer, how many vials do they fill a day? And their purpose is to rid the world of COVID. And if they can't get their employees and their extended employees to buy into that, nothing works. I mean, you may know, I don't know if you probably do, but Moderna doesn't make the vaccine itself. They're working, and at least in the beginning, they were working with a packer down in Maryland, and then they were making this stuff or receiving it and then packaging it and shipping it out. Now they've got to believe as much as the CEO of Moderna does that they're out to save the world.
Mm-hmm.
And every company has to have that kind of a story. And they have to make it has to be believable. It can't be concocted, but they have to have this kind of story, especially when they're working and depending on non-employees to do critical jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And today, that's what's really happening. It really is.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense, Sam. And I think at this point, we should save some of these additional topics for another episode, because I feel like we could talk for another hour.
Oh, easily.
Easily. And for all the listeners who made it up until this point, thank you for staying with us. This was really the first one that we haven't had in plans with Sam, but we're going to continue with this. And the next episode, we're going to dedicate to the outcome-based service. And we're going to ask the big question there. Is it a model for every service organization or not? But with that, we'll sign in next time. And I want to say Thank you, Sam. Thanks for your thoughts. Thanks for the opportunity to pick your brain. One last question. If people are interested in exploring these topics with you, what is the best way to get in touch?
The best way is to email me at sam@middlesexconsulting.com, or I'm on LinkedIn, and connect with me. Connect as well. I usually accept invitations as long as somebody is not obviously going to try to sell me something.
Sounds fair. I do the
Right.
same.
Right. So connect, but write to me that either through LinkedIn or through the sam@middlesexconsulting.com. And as you might have observed, I like to talk, and that would be fun.
Excellent. Sam.